Once you understand who your customer is and you know them well, you've got to talk to them. You got to get out in the marketplace. And that's where you get into positioning and branding. So positioning falls into the know your customer category. Branding falls into what are you going to show them? What are you going to bring into the market in a cohesive way that communicates that positioning? So if you look at positioning, we're going a little bit further at this stage than know your customer. We're gonna figure out how to talk about it. And there's this classic book written in 1976 by these advertising executives called Positioning. So if you've seen this, this is Ries and Jack Trout. And it's still seen today as the classic book on this topic. It's amazing reading this book because they're establishing in the first chapter why this matters in 1976. Why should anybody care about this? Because everybody at that time was really thinking a lot about image. So the idea was you find a product, you bring out an attribute of that product, like a Jaguar or a Rolex watch, and you create an evocative story, a lifestyle story. Ralph Lauren, this obviously was big. And they're saying, no, not so much right now. Now, how does this apply to us? We're not a consumer product, and it totally applies. And I'll get into that, of why this is so important to me and why it should be so important to you. And they thought positioning, why does this matter? And they're explaining, because our brains have this very limited capacity to understand new information. Now, if we had very little coming into our brains every day, it wouldn't be a problem. Because you could sit down with somebody for 30 minutes and explain your thing, and they would listen and say, oh, that's pretty cool. I love that. It's not going to happen. Even if you have somebody's attention, you still can't get them to think. You can't. It doesn't work. What you can do is what they're talking about in positioning, which is called the against position. And that's what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to go through this whole book, but I want to get this to something that we can use and that I've used or I'm testing. So I'm going to show you what I'm about to do. And then we can talk about this and see what you think the right approach is. But, you know, the brain is what they call an inadequate container. It has the inability to take in new information easily that contradicts what it already knows. The thing about positioning is you only get one thought in someone else's brain about you, about your company, about what you do, about your personal brand, however you want to look at that. You really only get one thought. So if you say I'm a digital marketer, they're going to think you're a digital marketer. And then if you say, yeah, but I'm different than the digital marketers because I have a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, they're like, oh, you're a digital marketer, right? You're not going to ever get past that. It's impossible. I mean, maybe if you have 5 hours with somebody or they hire you and then they start working with you and then they realize, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. It's different. Well, it's not going to work. So this idea of the product ladder and the ideas in somebody's head is the start of this. So, you know, they're saying, you know, if an advertiser wants to introduce a new product category, they must carry in a new ladder. And this is too difficult. If the new category is not positioned against the old one in particular, the mind has no room for what's new and different unless it's related to the old. This is how you bring the new idea in, you relate it to the old idea that's already there. That's how you can say, I'm an innovator in executive coaching without saying I'm an innovator in executive coaching. You're the against position innovator against what they think executive coaching is. That's how you do it. And he's got a great example here about the uncola position. So he talks about Hertz, he talks about Avis. Those are classic examples. Coke and Pepsi, McDonald's and Burger King are examples. Now, this is all relevant to us, so I don't want to lose you here. I'll explain the uncola position and then my application right now of what I've done related to the uncola position. So the classic positioning strategy is to worm your way into a ladder owned by somebody else, as 7-Up did. What's the ladder? The ladder is soft drinks. So I've got an idea of soft drinks in my mind. I think of Coke, I think of Pepsi, and some other stuff, and that's me. Or maybe I have a local soft drink and that's kind of up there. But that local soft drink owned that contrary position against Coke. And they did that because they're local, there's something different or special about it. So see, it worked. But if they just sort of show up in the market, it's not going to be so easy to do that. There's a better way, which is to be counter to get a position on the ladder that's already in somebody's mind. So how does 7-Up get on that ladder where somebody sees 7-Up and they're like, that, I know what that is. And I like it. Well, they did this idea where they created something called the Uncola. So I know what a cola is. I think my ladder is Coke. I think Pepsi. I think everything else. And now somebody comes to me and says, I have an Uncola. Boom, right on the product ladder for cola. And you got a rung called Uncola. Now they can pay attention to what 7-Up is as an innovation, as something new, because it's been associated with something familiar. Cola, Uncola, 7-Up, brand message, purchase. That's a big deal. We can do it. That's the amazing thing, is we can do that too. Now, if you look at Hertz, you look at Avis, I can get into more details, but I want to go to Salesforce.com because that's where it really triggered it. So I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to take advantage of this? How am I going to, little old me, how am I going to create a position in the marketplace for my little company with no money? And, I don't have an ad agency, I don't have all this stuff that everybody has. How am I going to do this? And here's what I came up with. So I'm going to show you something that some of you may have seen already from years ago. Some of you may not be familiar with this story, but this is how Salesforce.com started. So Salesforce.com needed to show people that their innovation called cloud computing, distributed computing, however, I don't know, cloud computing, on-demand computing, was better than hosted on-premise software run by IT departments. That's a big shift. If they went out and just said, we got a better idea, you can do this and you put it in the cloud and you don't have to service it and it'll cost less money and you can be flexible and you can turn it on and turn it off as you want. And you only have to pay by the month and you have to pay. Nobody can hear that because they're just thinking software. They don't even know what it is. Well, what they did is they went to the ladder. So the ladder around software was, Microsoft and SAP, and each one of those companies had a rung on that ladder, and they came in and said software. So they went right into the ladder, and then they said not software. So if you see this image right here, I'm sharing. They took this, and these little guys, I guess, were walking around at an SAP trade show or across the street, and they had signs up, not software. The future is here. That was it. And look what happened. It worked big time because they got there first with that idea. So not software now is them. Salesforce is on the rung of software as not software. 7-Up is on the rung of cola as Uncola, right? Well, we can do this too. So here's my approach to it. Let's see how it goes, but I love it. So the idea for me was, what's the rung in people's minds about me? So I'm saying, well, I have this innovative community and we have masterminds and it's different and the people are great. And, I'm doing all this stuff. We have events, some's free, some's paid. It doesn't cost that much. You're going to meet great people. Networking. People show up here because they're networking. They're looking for customers in the conventional way. That doesn't work very well. And people are sick of it, but they know what it is. So the idea of the rung is networking. So in their mind, they've got a couple of networking groups that they're familiar with. And that's the mind ladder around networking. So yeah, I go here, and I used to do BNI and I hated it. And then I do the C-suite network, and oh yeah, my friend Ralph, and what's this company called? I don't know. His name's Ralph. So they got this going on. I have to get into that ladder as something better and different, or at least different. So they'll show up and think of it as something different. So I'm coming out here, I'm saying not networking. So this is our version of that Salesforce.com, not software image. So if it's not networking, what is it then? Community connection cache. It's almost less important to say what it is than to say what it's not, because I'm in the mind of that person now. And if somebody else comes out and says, well, I'm not networking either, I'm a community, or I'm different than networking, it's too late. If you've already seen me owning that position on the rung is not networking, you're not going to change your mind and bring somebody else in as not networking. There's not going to be two not networkings in somebody's mind. I've already got it. I got there first. Now, if I can get there first with enough people, I really got a business. How many people do I need? I don't know. How many people do I need to make Revenue Climber successful? You know, I don't need 20 million. It's a lot less people. And I can get that position in the minds of enough people to make this company successful. And that's what you can do as well, no matter what you do. So think of what they think about in their mind on that ladder when they're in your category. Not about how you think they're in their category, about how they think. I don't think of this as networking. I think of it as community and learning and workshops. And, you know, they don't. People who just come here the first time, they think of it as networking. So you need to find your version of that. And then you have to think about, how are you contrary to that? How are you against that, but familiar, so they can decide you're safe and comfortable and work with you. So this is kind of matching up against the challenge climb related to positioning and branding. It's just a quick snapshot of this book. There's a ton more in here. This isn't a book review. I'm trying to just take these concepts, create an applicable market tested or proven out situation. I'm in the kind of a testing phase with this, even though I know the concepts work, obviously. And I believe they work in B2B. They work for Salesforce in B2B. And, you know, think about that at the time, they didn't have a lot of money. You know, at that time, Salesforce.com was going up against SAP and going up against an IT industry that just didn't want to change anything. They didn't like SAP, but it was what they were familiar with, and they trained their careers on it, and they didn't want to change anything. And this is how they did it with this positioning concept. It wasn't just because they had a different way or a better product and convinced people that cloud computing was better. That would not have worked for them. All right, I'm gonna shut off the recording and obviously check out the positioning and branding challenge climb.